Have you ever wondered why some people disappear from our lives yet never truly leave our minds? Why is it that one face, one voice, or one moment can remain alive inside someone's heart for years, while countless others quietly fade into nothing? Most people believe that if a man still thinks about you, he'll tell you. They imagine he'll send a message, he'll confess his feelings, he'll ask for another chance. But real emotional attachment rarely announces itself so clearly. The deepest emotions almost never speak first. They hide, they wait, they quietly shape a person's choices long before they become words. This is why so many women misunderstand silence. They mistake distance for indifference. They believe that because he isn't calling, he must have forgotten. But forgetting someone who changed you isn't a decision, it's a psychological process. And some people never complete that process, not because they don't want to, but because a part of who they became is forever connected to the person they lost. There is something fascinating about the human mind. It can erase birthdays, forget conversations, lose entire years inside a blur of ordinary memories, yet somehow it can preserve one laugh, one touch, one look, as if time itself refused to carry it away. Why? Because memory isn't controlled by time, it's controlled by emotion. The stronger the emotional experience, the deeper it settles beneath consciousness. And once something reaches that depth, it no longer needs to be remembered intentionally. It simply becomes part of the person. This is why some men continue living their lives, building careers, meeting new people, smiling in photographs, while an invisible part of them continues measuring every new connection against someone from the past. Not because they're obsessed, not because they're weak, but because the human mind constantly compares the present to experiences that once made it feel completely alive. This comparison happens automatically, long before logic has a chance to interfere. Imagine walking into a room filled with hundreds of perfumes. You may not recognize every scent, but if one of them resembles someone deeply important to you, your attention shifts instantly, not because you chose it, because your unconscious chose it first. Relationships work exactly the same way. Every meaningful emotional experience creates an internal pattern, and once that pattern exists, everything afterward is quietly compared against it. Most people never realize they're doing this. They simply feel that something is missing, that no one quite feels the same, that every relationship somehow lacks an invisible quality they cannot explain. They think they're searching for another person. In reality, they're searching for a feeling they once experienced. And feelings leave much deeper fingerprints than faces ever could. This is why forgetting isn't about removing someone from memory. It's about replacing the emotional meaning attached to them. That is infinitely more difficult, because emotions don't live inside photographs, they live inside identity. Think about it. Why do certain songs suddenly remind you of someone after years of silence? Why does walking past a familiar street unexpectedly tighten your chest? Why can one random sentence transport you back to a moment you thought was long gone? Those memories weren't sleeping, they were waiting for the right emotional trigger. The unconscious mind stores experiences differently than conscious memory. It doesn't organize life by dates. It organizes life by emotional intensity. That is why one ordinary afternoon with the right person can become more unforgettable than an entire year spent with someone else. Time isn't the architect of attachment. Depth is. And depth is created when someone makes us feel understood in ways we didn't know we needed. This is where most relationships quietly change us, not through dramatic declarations, but through subtle emotional safety. When someone sees the version of you that the world never notices, when they accept parts of you that you hide from everyone else, something extraordinary happens. The nervous system begins associating that person with peace, with relief, with home. Once that association is formed, the absence of that person feels strangely unfamiliar. Not because they're perfect, but because your mind has already rewritten part of its emotional map around them. This explains why some men appear completely fine after a breakup. They continue working, logging, socializing, dating. Everything seems normal, yet late at night, when distractions disappear, something quietly returns. Not always the person, sometimes only the feeling, sometimes only the silence they left behind. The world believes healing happens by moving on. Psychology suggests something different. People don't always move on. Sometimes they simply move forward while carrying invisible emotional architecture built by someone they'll never completely forget. This is why certain names still create reactions years later. A slight pause, a different tone of voice, an unexpected smile, or an uncomfortable silence. The body often remembers what the conscious mind tries to deny. Have you ever noticed how someone suddenly changes when your name appears in conversation? Perhaps they answer too quickly or avoid the subject entirely. Maybe they laugh, but the laughter arrives half a second too late. These tiny reactions are rarely rehearsed. They're automatic. An automatic behavior tells us far more than carefully chosen words ever could. Words are edited. Behavior isn't. That is why psychologists spend less time listening to explanations and more time observing patterns. Patterns reveal truths that language often hides. Because people can lie to others, they can even lie to themselves. But repeating behavior over months or years becomes almost impossible to fake. If someone truly meant nothing, their emotional system eventually stops reacting. The memories lose intensity, the comparisons disappear, the emotional charge fades. But when someone continues influencing decisions long after they're gone, something much deeper remains active beneath awareness. And this brings us to a question almost nobody asks. What exactly keeps someone emotionally alive inside another person's mind long after the relationship has ended? It isn't beauty. It isn't attraction. It isn't even love in the romantic sense most people imagine. The answer is far more surprising, and once you understand it, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. Because the first sign that a man cannot truly forget you has nothing to do with what he says. It begins with something so subtle that even he usually has no idea it's happening. The first sign rarely appears in his words. It appears in his standards. From the outside, it looks ordinary. He meets someone new, he smiles, he enjoys the conversation. Everything seems promising. Yet somehow, without realizing it, he begins making invisible comparisons, not because he wants to. Because the mind automatically measures every new emotional experience against the one that once felt the most meaningful. This comparison is almost silent. He may never say, "She reminds me of you." In fact, he may believe he has completely moved on, but every time someone new enters his life, his unconscious asks the same question. Does this feel like home? Not, is she prettier? Not, is she more successful? Not even, do I love her? Instead, can I be the same person I was when I felt completely understood? Most people think they miss a person. Often, what they truly miss is the version of themselves that only existed around that person. That distinction changes everything because people rarely chase memories. They chase emotional states. Perhaps with you, he laughed without pretending. Perhaps he admitted fears he had never spoken aloud. Perhaps, for the first time in years, he didn't feel the need to impress anyone. Those moments become emotionally significant because they lower the defenses the mind spends years building. And once someone experiences that kind of emotional freedom, ordinary connections begin to feel strangely incomplete. This explains why some men continue dating without ever feeling fully satisfied. From the outside, everything appears normal. Different faces, different relationships, different beginnings. Yet something always seems missing. They cannot explain what it is. Neither can the people they date. The missing piece isn't another relationship. It's an emotional depth that hasn't been recreated. The human mind isn't searching for familiarity. It's searching for emotional resonance, that subtle feeling of "I've been seen." Very few people create that experience. Even fewer realize they've done it. This is why genuine emotional impact is so rare. You don't leave a lasting impression because you were perfect. You leave one because, for a brief moment, someone felt safe enough to stop performing. And when that happens, the unconscious remembers. Have you ever noticed how certain conversations stay with you for years? Not because they were dramatic, but because they changed how you saw yourself. A single sentence can become more unforgettable than 1,000 compliments. Because meaning outweighs repetition. The same principle applies to relationships. The moments that transform us are rarely the loudest. They're the quiet ones. The conversation that lasted until sunrise, the unexpected silence that didn't feel uncomfortable. The moment someone looked at you and understood what you couldn't explain. These experiences become emotional landmarks. Years later, the mind still returns to them without permission. Not because it refuses to move forward, because they became part of its internal map. This leads to the second sign. He remembers details no one else would remember. Not birthdays, not anniversaries. Those are conscious memories. Instead, he remembers the insignificant things, the way you stirred your coffee before speaking, the expression you made whenever you were trying not to laugh, the exact sentence you whispered during an ordinary afternoon, the strange habit you apologized for, even though it never bothered him. These details survive because emotion acts like glue. The stronger the emotional experience, the stronger the memory attached to it. Scientists often describe memory as selective, but emotion decides what gets selected. That's why someone can forget entire vacations, yet remember one sentence spoken during a 10-minute conversation years ago. Emotion tells the brain, this matters. Everything else becomes background noise. Sometimes these memories appear unexpectedly. A familiar song begins playing, a perfume passes by, someone else laughs in a similar way. Suddenly, a memory arrives without invitation. These aren't deliberate recollections, they're emotional echoes. The unconscious isn't trying to make him suffer. It's simply following associations it created long ago. This is why healing can feel unpredictable. Someone may feel completely fine for months. Then one insignificant trigger brings everything rushing back. Not because progress disappeared, because emotional memory doesn't operate in straight lines. It moves through associations. One image awakens another. One smell opens an entire chapter. One ordinary afternoon becomes connected to hundreds of forgotten moments. The unconscious doesn't think in calendars, it thinks in symbols. And symbols possess remarkable power. A simple place can represent safety. A song can represent belonging. A photograph can represent an entire version of life that no longer exists. This is why removing pictures from a phone rarely removes someone from the heart. Objects aren't the source. They are merely reminders. The emotional connection already exists inside. The third sign is even more misunderstood. Silence. Most people assume silence means someone no longer cares. Sometimes that's true. But sometimes silence means the opposite. Consider how people react to small disappointments. They speak freely. They complain. They joke about them. Minor emotional experiences are easy to discuss because they carry little psychological weight. Deep experiences behave differently. The more meaningful something becomes, the more carefully the mind protects it. Have you ever tried describing a life-changing moment? Words suddenly feel too small. The experience seems impossible to explain. The same thing happens after certain relationships. Some men avoid talking about the woman who changed them. Not because she meant nothing, because speaking about her makes the emotional reality impossible to ignore. Silence becomes protection, not deception. The world often mistakes emotional control for emotional absence. They aren't the same thing. Many people learn from childhood that vulnerability is dangerous. So instead of expressing pain, they organize it, hold it, lock it behind routines. From the outside, they appear calm. Inside, entire conversations continue without sound. This creates an interesting contradiction. The people who affected us the least are often the easiest to discuss. The ones who transformed us the most become strangely difficult to explain. Have you ever noticed someone suddenly changing the subject when a certain name appears? Perhaps their posture shifts, their breathing changes, their eyes briefly lose focus. These reactions happen faster than conscious thought. The body responds before the mind constructs an explanation. Psychologists have long observed that nonverbal behavior often reveals emotional truth more accurately than speech, because speech can be rehearsed. Physiology cannot. A brief hesitation, a delayed answer, an unexpected smile, a quiet sigh. These tiny moments often reveal memories still carrying emotional energy. And emotional energy doesn't disappear simply because time passes. It changes form. Sometimes it becomes gratitude, sometimes regret, sometimes quiet acceptance, sometimes longing, but it almost never becomes nothing. This is why meaningful relationships continue shaping people long after they end. Not through constant thoughts, through subtle transformations in perception. Without realizing it, he becomes more careful, more patient, more aware of emotional nuance, not because someone instructed him, because one relationship quietly rewrote how he understands connection. The remarkable thing is, he may never consciously connect those changes to you. He simply becomes different, and somewhere beneath everyday life, the influence remains. Because the people who truly change us don't always stay in our lives. Sometimes, They stay inside the person we become afterward. And that realization leads us to something even deeper. Because if emotional memory explains why he remembers, it still doesn't explain why some men begin changing their entire behavior after losing one particular woman. That transformation is far more profound than memory alone. And it reveals the next hidden pattern almost no one recognizes. There comes a moment in every meaningful relationship when something invisible happens. It isn't an argument. It isn't a kiss. It isn't even the day two people decide to separate. It happens much earlier. The moment one person unknowingly becomes part of the other's identity. Most relationships exist only in memory. The extraordinary ones begin living inside personality itself. This is the difference almost nobody notices. Some people live your life. Others quietly reshape the way you experience life. When that happens, forgetting is no longer about memory. It becomes a question of identity. Because how do you forget someone who changed the way you see the world? You don't. You simply learn to live around the absence. This is where the fourth hidden pattern begins. After losing someone who truly mattered, a man often changes in ways even he cannot explain. Perhaps he becomes slower to trust, not because everyone is dangerous, but because he finally understands what genuine emotional loss feels like. Perhaps he starts listening more carefully. Before, he interrupted. Now he waits. Before, he assumed. Now he asks questions. Before, he believed every disagreement had to be won. Now he realizes understanding matters more than victory. These changes rarely happen because of age alone. Growth is not guaranteed by time. It is usually born from emotional impact. Pain has an unusual way of revealing parts of ourselves we never noticed while everything felt comfortable. Comfort teaches us very little. Loss forces us to pay attention. Many people believe heartbreak destroys people. Sometimes it introduces them to themselves. Think about the strongest people you've ever met. Very few became wise because life was easy. Most became wise because they survived experiences that demanded transformation. Relationships can do exactly that. One person enters your life and leaves carrying pieces of your heart. But in exchange, they leave behind lessons your old self could never have discovered alone. This is why meaningful love is never truly wasted, even when it ends. Especially when it ends, because endings expose truths beginnings often hide. After separation, excuses disappear. The noise fades. Eventually, only reality remains. A man begins asking questions he avoided before. Why did I react that way? Why was I afraid to be vulnerable? Why did I push away the person who accepted me most? These questions don't always appear immediately. Sometimes they take months, sometimes years. Growth rarely follows the calendar people expect. The unconscious works patiently. It waits until the mind is finally ready to understand what the heart experienced long ago. This explains something many people misunderstand. Healing is not forgetting. Healing is understanding. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And begin asking, what did this experience reveal about me? The second question changes everything because it transforms pain into awareness, and awareness changes behavior. Without realizing it, he begins becoming the man he should have been all along. Ironically, sometimes that transformation happens too late for the relationship itself. Life has a strange sense of timing. People often become emotionally prepared only after they've lost the person who inspired the change. This creates one of the greatest paradoxes of love. The relationship may end, yet its deepest influence is only beginning. Years later, friends notice something different. He wasn't like this before. He's calmer now. He actually listens. He's more emotionally available. Most assume maturity simply arrived, but maturity rarely appears out of nowhere. There is usually a story behind every meaningful transformation. A conversation, a goodbye, a mistake that refused to disappear. Growth leaves fingerprints. Someone helped create those fingerprints, even if no one ever knows their name. Then comes the fifth pattern. It appears whenever your story is mentioned. Imagine sitting with friends. Someone casually brings up your name. For most people, this is just another conversation. But for someone who still carries emotional significance, something subtle changes. Perhaps his posture stiffens. Perhaps he grows unusually quiet. Perhaps he gently corrects a detail no one else considered important, not because accuracy matters, because emotionally meaningful memories are deeply protected. People defend what still carries value, not always with anger, sometimes with silence, sometimes with respect, sometimes by refusing to allow the story to become something it never was. Notice something interesting. When people truly feel indifferent, they exaggerate, they mock, they dismiss. Emotionally detached people have little reason to preserve the truth. Those who still care often protect it, even privately, especially privately. This doesn't necessarily mean he wants you back. That is where many people become confused. Memory and desire are not identical. A person can recognize someone's importance without believing the relationship should continue. That distinction requires emotional maturity. Some stories deserve gratitude more than repetition. Some people enter our lives to awaken us, not to stay forever. Accepting this requires enormous psychological strength, because the human ego wants ownership. The heart often wants something different. It wants meaning. Once meaning has been found, the relationship has already fulfilled part of its purpose, whether it lasted months or decades. This realization changes another common misunderstanding. People often believe lasting impact depends upon time. It doesn't. Some relationships last 10 years without changing either person. Others last 6 months and permanently reshape both lives. That measures time. That measures transformation. Never confuse the two. That begins the moment masks disappear. When someone sees not your image, but your truth. The truth you spend most of your life hiding, your fears, your insecurities, your imperfections, your quiet hopes. When another human being witnesses those parts without turning away, something extraordinary happens. The nervous system begins relaxing in ways it never has before. Safety becomes associated with a specific person. This is why emotional connection feels so different from attraction. Attraction excites the mind, safety transforms it. And transformation leaves echoes. Years later, he may not remember every conversation, but he'll remember how he felt becoming himself around you. That feeling becomes almost impossible to recreate artificially. This explains why some men leave healthy relationships searching for excitement, only to discover excitement cannot replace emotional depth. Novelty fades. Authenticity doesn't. Eventually, many realized they were searching in the wrong direction. not for someone more exciting, but for someone who made life feel more honest. That realization often arrives quietly, late at night, driving alone, watching rain against the windshield, hearing an old melody, reading a message they never deleted. Life has countless ways of returning us to unfinished emotions, not to punish us, but to complete our understanding, because every unresolved feeling eventually asks the same question. Have you finally learned what this experience came to teach you? Until that answer becomes yes. The lesson continues appearing in different forms, different faces, different relationships, different endings. The people change, the pattern remains. And this leads us to the deepest realization of all. The final sign has nothing to do with memory, nothing to do with comparison, nothing to do with silence. It has everything to do with who he becomes after you are gone. Because sometimes, the greatest evidence that someone changed a life is not that they are remembered. It is that they permanently changed the direction of the person who remembers them. And that is where the final piece of this psychological puzzle begins. There is one final truth that separates ordinary relationships from the ones that permanently change a person's life. It isn't found in messages. It isn't hidden inside photographs. It isn't measured by how long two people stayed together. It reveals itself in one simple question. Who did you become because of that person? Most people spend years trying to figure out whether someone still misses them. But they ask the wrong question. Missing someone is temporary. Transformation is permanent. A man can stop checking your social media. He can stop looking at old pictures. He can stop wondering where you are. But if meeting you changed the way he understands trust, love, vulnerability, or even himself, then a part of your presence continues living inside every decision he makes. That is something time cannot erase, because people eventually forget conversations, they forget dates. They even forget the sound of someone